In a quiet corner of the galaxy, far from Earth, a small research station floated silently among the stars. The station, called Horizon 7, was humanity's first attempt to listen for signs of life beyond their solar system. For years, it had drifted through space, its antennas scanning the cosmos for any hint of intelligent beings. Most days were uneventful, filled with static and silence. But one day, everything changed. Dr. Daniel Carter sat at his desk in the dimly lit control room, staring at a screen covered in lines of data. He was a tall man with sharp features and a calm demeanor, known for his patience and curiosity. Beside him stood Lieutenant Lisa Monroe, a confident woman with short brown hair and steady eyes. She wasn't just there to assist. As head of security, she kept a watchful eye on everyone and everything. Together, they made an odd but effective team. The alert came suddenly, a faint signal picked up by the station's long-range sensors. At first, it seemed like random noise, but as Daniel adjusted the settings, patterns began to emerge. The signal repeated itself over and over, like a broken record. It wasn't speech or music, it was something else entirely. After hours of analysis, Daniel managed to isolate part of the message. It contained coordinates pointing to a distant star system called Zeta 9. "This is incredible," Daniel said, leaning forward in his chair. His voice carried both excitement and disbelief. "If this isn't some natural phenomenon, then we're looking at proof of extraterrestrial intelligence." Lisa crossed her arms, her expression cautious. "Or a trap. We don't know what or who sent this. Shouldn't we report it to Earth Command before doing anything else?" Daniel hesitated. Reporting the discovery would mean waiting weeks, maybe months, for permission to investigate. By then, someone else might intercept the signal or worse, miss the opportunity altogether. "What if this is our chance to make history?" he asked softly. "To be the ones who find out what's out there." After a moment of thought, Lisa sighed. "Fine, but we do this carefully. No unnecessary risks." With that agreement, the crew prepared a probe to send toward Zeta 9. As the tiny craft launched into the void, the tension aboard Horizon 7 grew thicker. Hours passed before the probe sent back its first images. What they saw left them stunned. Zeta 9 had only one planet worth investigating, a massive world shrouded in thick clouds of toxic gases. Its surface churned with storms so violent that lightning strikes illuminated entire continents. Yet beneath those swirling clouds, something gleamed faintly, an unnatural structure buried under layers of debris. The readings suggested ruins, possibly remnants of an ancient civilization. But that wasn't all. Sensors detected movement within the wreckage. Not wind or geological shifts, but something alive. Whatever it was, it radiated energy unlike anything the crew had ever encountered. "We need to go down there," Daniel said firmly. "This could be humanity's first contact with alien life." Lisa frowned, glancing at the ship's AI, Iris, for confirmation. Iris analyzed the risk level of landing on that planet. "Extreme caution advised," replied the smooth mechanical voice. "Environmental conditions are hostile, and unknown variables pose significant danger." Despite the warning, Daniel couldn't ignore the pull of curiosity. This was why he'd dedicated his life to science, to uncover mysteries hidden among the stars. And now, one of those mysteries seemed to be calling directly to him. As preparations began for a descent to the mysterious planet, Lisa found herself torn between duty and doubt. She trusted Daniel's judgment, but every instinct told her this mission was too risky. Still, deep down, she knew they couldn't turn away. Not when the answers to questions humanity had asked for centuries might lie just beyond reach. Little did they know, the true challenge awaited them below, not just in the form of danger, but in choices that would test their courage, their unity, and perhaps even their very humanity. The team gathered in the docking bay of Horizon 7, preparing for their descent to the mysterious planet. Alongside Daniel and Lisa were two others: Corporal Ryan Hughes, a soldier with a hardened face and a skeptical attitude, and Dr. Emily Walsh, a biologist whose wide eyes sparkled with excitement. Each of them carried equipment tailored for exploration. Tools to analyze samples, weapons for protection, and devices to record everything they encountered. As the shuttle broke through the thick clouds of the planet's atmosphere, turbulence shook the craft violently. Lightning flashed outside the windows, illuminating jagged peaks and valleys below. The surface was even more chaotic than the probe's images had shown. Rivers of molten rock snaked across the landscape, while towering storms raged endlessly. It felt like stepping into a nightmare. "This place is alive," Emily murmured, clutching her seat as the shuttle landed on a relatively stable patch of ground. Her voice trembled, but her gaze remained fixed on the alien terrain beyond the window. Once the engines powered down, the team stepped out onto the ash-covered soil. The air was unbreathable, forcing them to rely on their suits' oxygen systems. The gravity here was heavier than Earth's, making every movement sluggish. Despite the challenges, Daniel led the way toward the ruins spotted earlier by the probe. As they approached, the scale of the structures became clear. Massive towers jutted from the ground, half buried under centuries of decay. Strange symbols covered their surfaces, glowing faintly as if charged with energy. Daniel ran his gloved hand over one of the markings, his mind racing with possibilities. "This civilization must have been advanced," he said aloud. But what happened to them? Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath their feet shifted slightly. A low rumble echoed around them, growing louder with each passing second. Suddenly, shadowy figures emerged from the ruins. They were tall and skeletal, their forms cloaked in tendrils that seemed to writhe like living smoke. Their presence radiated an eerie calm, yet their appearance sent chills down everyone's spines. One of the beings raised a hand, and a voice entered their minds, not spoken words, but thoughts projected directly into their consciousness. "You have answered the call." Lisa instinctively reached for her weapon, but Daniel held up a hand to stop her. "Wait," he whispered. Turning to the creatures, he asked, "Who are you? What do you want from us?" "We are the Harbingers," came the reply. "We have waited long for those who can understand death. Only such beings may prevent the shuddering." "The shuddering," Emily repeated, her voice tinged with confusion. "What does that mean?" The Harbingers didn't answer immediately. Instead, they studied the humans intently, their glowing eyes piercing through the dim light. After a moment, one of them spoke again. "To prove yourselves, you must endure trials. Only then will we know if you are worthy." Ryan scoffed, tightening his grip on his rifle. "Trials? You think we're just going to play along with this nonsense?" Daniel shot him a warning glance before addressing the Harbingers. "If these trials will help us understand why you called us here, then we'll do it. But we need answers first." The Harbingers hesitated, then nodded. "Very well. Know this: your survival depends on your ability to confront mortality. Fail, and all is lost." With that, the shadowy figures gestured for the team to follow them deeper into the ruins. The path ahead was dark and foreboding, lit only by the faint glow of the symbols etched into the walls. As they walked, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, not just by the Harbingers, but by something far older and more dangerous lurking in the shadows. Lisa leaned closer to him, her voice barely audible over the hum of their suits. "Do you really trust them?" "I don't know," Daniel admitted, "but we don't have much of a choice." Emily trailed behind, her scientific curiosity battling with her growing unease. She had always dreamed of meeting alien life, but this wasn't what she'd imagined. These beings weren't friendly or welcoming. They were testing them, probing their weaknesses. And Ryan looked ready to bolt at any moment, his distrust evident in every step he took. Despite their fears, the group pressed onward. The Harbingers stopped at a large chamber filled with strange machinery. In its center stood a platform surrounded by shifting patterns of light. One of the Harbingers turned to face them. "Step forward when ready. Your trials begin now." No one moved at first. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. Finally, Daniel stepped onto the platform, determined to see this through. Whatever lay ahead, he knew it would change them, and perhaps the fate of countless worlds. Forever. Daniel stood on the glowing platform, his heart pounding as the harbingers activated the machinery. The air around him shimmered, and suddenly, he was no longer in the dark chamber. He found himself back in his childhood home, a small house filled with warm memories. But something was wrong. Smoke filled the air, and flames licked at the walls. It was the night his parents had died. Daniel. A voice called from upstairs. It was his mother's voice, desperate and pleading. Without thinking, he ran toward the stairs, but the heat was unbearable. Every step felt heavier than the last. He knew what would happen if he went up there. He'd seen it before. Yet the choice weighed heavily on him. Should he save himself or try to rescue them? Tears streamed down his face as he hesitated, torn between duty and fear. Finally, he turned away, unable to relive the tragedy again. As he did, the scene dissolved into darkness, leaving him gasping for breath. Next, it was Emily's turn. Her trial took her to a dense forest overrun by monstrous creatures, twisted versions of animals she had studied throughout her career. They surrounded her, their eyes glowing with hunger. She froze, overwhelmed by terror. These weren't just random beasts. They represented her deepest fears of failure and inadequacy. One by one, the creatures lunged at her, forcing her to fight back despite her panic. With each strike, she realized she wasn't fighting for survival alone. She was proving to herself that she could overcome her doubts. Lisa faced a different kind of challenge. She found herself back on a battlefield from her past, during a mission where she had failed to protect her team. Explosions echoed around her as comrades fell, their cries echoing in her ears. This time, however, she saw an opportunity to act differently. Summoning all her strength, she charged forward, shielding others and making choices she hadn't been able to make before. Though the outcome remained tragic, she emerged stronger, knowing she had done everything possible. Ryan's trial hit him hardest. He was thrust into a never-ending war zone, facing waves of enemies that seemed impossible to defeat. Each loss drained him physically and emotionally until he collapsed, exhausted. In his darkest moment, the harbingers' voices whispered cruel truths. "You are weak. You will always fail." Ryan screamed in defiance, refusing to give in, but the weight of his failures crushed him. When the simulation ended, he lay motionless, barely conscious. When the trials concluded, the team reunited in the chamber, shaken and changed. The harbingers observed silently, their expressions unreadable. Finally, one of them spoke. 3 have passed. 1 has not. Ryan struggled to stand, his body trembling. I tried," he stammered, shame burning in his chest. Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder, offering quiet support, but the harbingers were firm. "He cannot continue. His spirit is broken." Lisa clenched her fists, anger flaring. "That's not fair. He gave everything he had." "The trials reveal truth," the harbingers replied coldly. "Only those who embrace death can face what comes next." Though reluctant, the group accepted the verdict. Ryan stayed behind, as the others prepared to move forward. Before leaving, Daniel knelt beside him. "You've already shown courage," he said gently. "Stay strong. We'll finish this together, even if you're not with us." With heavy hearts, Daniel, Lisa, and Emily followed the harbingers deeper into the ruins. Each step felt heavier now, not just because of the oppressive atmosphere, but because of the sacrifices they had witnessed. The harbingers led them to another chamber, its walls lined with ancient carvings depicting battles between light and shadow. At its center floated a swirling orb of energy, pulsating like a heartbeat. "This is the Nexus," the harbingers explained. "Here lies the key to understanding your purpose. But beware, the path ahead demands more than bravery. It requires unity." As the group stared at the orb, they couldn't help but wonder what awaited them next. Whatever it was, they knew they had to stay focused. Failure wasn't an option, not when so much depended on their success. The Harbingers guided Daniel, Lisa, and Emily closer to the glowing orb at the center of the chamber. Its light pulsed rhythmically, as if alive, casting strange shadows on the walls. The air grew colder, and an unsettling silence settled over the room. For a moment, no one spoke. They could feel the weight of what was about to come. Something monumental, something that would change everything. One of the Harbingers stepped forward, its shadowy form shifting like smoke. "You have proven yourselves capable of understanding death," it said in a voice that echoed inside their minds. "Now you must learn why we called you here." Daniel swallowed hard. His throat dried despite the moisture regulator in his suit. "Tell us," he said firmly. "What's happening? What's the shuddering?" The Harbingers paused, as if weighing how much to reveal. Then they began to speak, their words forming images in the teens' minds rather than sounds. Long ago, their civilization had ruled vast empires across the stars. They were powerful, wise, and arrogant, believing themselves masters of creation. In their hubris, they sought to harness forces beyond their control, a cosmic entity known only as the Devourer. "The Devourer is not life or death," the Harbingers explained. "It is entropy itself, feeding on chaos and destruction. We unleashed it by accident, and it consumed our people, our worlds, our very essence. To contain it, we sacrificed ourselves, becoming guardians trapped between dimensions." Emily listened intently, her scientific mind struggling to process the enormity of what she was hearing. "If you're guarding it, why do you need us?" she asked. "Why call humans to this place?" "Because the containment is failing," came the reply. "The barriers weaken with each passing cycle. If the Devourer breaks free, it will spread unchecked, consuming all in its path. Only beings who understand mortality can anchor the barriers anew." Lisa frowned, shaking her head. "And you think we're the ones who can stop this thing? We're just people. How are we supposed to fight something like that?" "It is not about fighting," the Harbingers said. "It is about sacrifice. One of you must enter the heart of the Devourer's domain and activate the anchor, a device that will stabilize the barriers from within. This act will seal the breach, but at great cost." A heavy silence fell over the group. Sacrifice. The word hung in the air like a storm cloud. No one wanted to say it, but they all knew what it meant. Whoever went into the Devourer's domain wouldn't be coming back. Daniel looked at his companions, seeing the fear and uncertainty etched on their faces. He thought about Earth, the billions of lives that depended on them without even knowing it. Slowly, he stepped forward. "I'll do it," he said, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. "No," Emily exclaimed, stepping toward him. "There has to be another way. I won't let you throw your life away." "There isn't another way," Daniel replied softly. "This is why we're here. This is why I'm here. I've spent my whole life searching for answers, for meaning. Maybe this is it." Lisa placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression torn between pride and sorrow. "Are you sure about this?" she asked quietly. "I am," Daniel said, "but I need you two to promise me something. Promise me you'll make sure my sacrifice matters. Tell everyone what happened here. Make sure humanity remembers." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, but she nodded. "We promise." Ran, who had been brought along despite failing the trials, leaned against the wall, watching silently. His earlier bitterness had softened into something resembling respect. "Just don't screw it up," he muttered, though his tone lacked its usual edge. With the decision made, the Harbingers led the group further into the ruins, guiding them toward the entrance of the Devourer's domain. As they walked, the environment shifted around them, becoming darker and more unstable. Cracks in the ground glowed faintly, and whispers filled the air, voices of countless souls lost to the Devourer. Finally, they reached the threshold. A massive chasm bathed in eerie light. Beyond it lay the realm of pure annihilation, Daniel took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. He turned to his friends one last time, memorizing their faces. "Take care of each other," he said simply. Then, without looking back, he stepped into the abyss. As Daniel stepped into the chasm, the world around him dissolved into chaos. The air shimmered and twisted, bending reality in ways that defied logic. Colors swirled violently, blending into shapes that shifted faster than his eyes could follow. Time itself seemed to unravel. Moments stretched into eternity, only to collapse back into fleeting seconds. He felt weightless, yet crushed by an invisible force, as if the universe itself was testing his resolve. Suddenly, visions began flooding his mind. He saw Earth vibrant and alive, teeming with humanity's triumphs and tragedies. Wars raged across continents, cities burned, and people cried out in despair. But amidst the destruction, there were also acts of courage and hope, strangers helping strangers, communities rebuilding after disasters, scientists working tirelessly to solve problems no one else dared to face. These images weren't just random memories. They were fragments of humanity's essence, its resilience and adaptability. Then the visions turned personal. Daniel relived moments from his own life. The loss of his parents, the loneliness of dedicating himself to research, the quiet joy of discovering something new. Each memory carried both pain and purpose, reminding him why he had chosen this path. Through it all, a voice whispered in his mind, cold and vast, yet strangely hypnotic. "You are fragile," the voice said. It wasn't hostile, but its indifference was terrifying. "Your kind clings to fleeting existence, building empires destined to crumble. Why resist? Entropy will claim you all." Daniel clenched his fists, forcing himself to focus. "We resist because it's what we do," he replied, his voice trembling but determined. "We fall, we fail, but we always rise again. That's who we are." The devourer didn't respond immediately. Instead, the environment grew more hostile. Shadows coalesced into monstrous forms, reaching for him with clawed hands. Winds howled like banshees, threatening to tear him apart. Yet Daniel pressed forward, driven by sheer willpower. Every step felt like walking through quicksand, every breath like inhaling fire. But he couldn't stop. Not now. Finally, he reached the heart of the domain. A swirling vortex of darkness, so dense it seemed to swallow light itself. Floating before it was the anchor, a crystalline device glowing faintly with an otherworldly energy. This was it, the moment everything depended on. Activating the anchor proved harder than Daniel expected. As he approached, tendrils of shadow lashed out, wrapping around his limbs and pulling him toward the vortex. Pain surged through his body, sharp and unrelenting. His vision blurred, and for a moment, he thought about giving up. What was the point? Humanity was small, insignificant compared to the vastness of the cosmos. Who was he to stand against such power? But then he remembered his friends, their faces, their voices, their promises. He thought about Emily's determination, Lisa's strength, even Ryan's gruff loyalty. They had trusted him to see this through, and he couldn't let them down. Summoning the last of his strength, he grabbed hold of the anchor and activated it. A surge of energy erupted, blinding and deafening. The shadows screamed as the barriers began to stabilize, sealing the breach layer by layer. Daniel felt himself being pulled into the vortex, his body disintegrating into particles of light. He didn't fight it. There was peace in knowing he had done what needed to be done. Back at the threshold, Lisa, Emily, and Ryan watched in stunned silence as the chasm collapsed inward, signaling success. Tears streamed down their faces as they realized the magnitude of Daniel's sacrifice. For a long time, none of them spoke. All they could do was stand together, united by grief and gratitude. Though the immediate threat had passed, the weight of what they had witnessed lingered. The universe was vast and filled with dangers beyond imagination. But thanks to Daniel, humanity had earned a chance to continue exploring it. a chance to prove that even in the face of annihilation, hope could endure. Months had passed since the team returned to Earth, but the memory of Daniel's sacrifice still weighed heavily on their hearts. Emily spent most of her days in a quiet office at the Global Space Research Institute, poring over data and writing reports about their encounter with the Harbingers and the Devourer. Her desk was cluttered with notes, sketches of alien symbols, and photographs of the team before everything changed. She often found herself staring at Daniel's picture, wondering if she could have done more to save him. Lisa, on the other hand, threw herself into advocacy work. She traveled across the globe, speaking at conferences and meeting with leaders to promote peaceful cooperation with extraterrestrial life. The experience on Zeta 9 had taught her that humanity wasn't alone in the universe, and that understanding others was far better than fearing them. Still, late at night, she would sit by her window, gazing at the stars and thinking about the man who had given everything to protect them. Ryan struggled the most. After failing the trials, he'd returned to Earth feeling like a failure, haunted by the knowledge that he hadn't been strong enough to help when it mattered most. But slowly, he began to find purpose again. He started mentoring young soldiers, sharing stories not just of battles won or lost, but of resilience and redemption. Though he rarely spoke of Daniel directly, his actions showed that the mission had left its mark on him too. Despite their different paths, the three stayed connected, meeting regularly to discuss what they called the legacy. They knew Daniel wouldn't want them to dwell on sadness. He'd want them to honor his sacrifice by making sure humanity learned from it. Together, they worked to spread awareness of the dangers lurking in the cosmos and the importance of unity in facing those threats. One evening, as winter settled over the city, Emily received an unexpected visitor. It was Lisa, holding a small box wrapped in plain paper. "I thought you should have this," she said softly, placing the box on Emily's desk. Curious, Emily opened it to find a fragment of the anchor, the crystalline device Daniel had used to seal the breach. Somehow, the Harbingers had sent it back, along with a single message. Remember the Deathworlders who answered the call. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she held the shard, its faint glow pulsing like a heartbeat. "They sent this for us." Lisa nodded. "It's proof that what we did mattered. That Daniel's sacrifice wasn't in vain." The next day, the team gathered in a private room at the Institute. Ryan arrived last, carrying a bottle of whiskey and 4 glasses. Without a word, he poured drinks for everyone, leaving one untouched in front of an empty chair. They raised their glasses in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. "Here's to Daniel," Lisa finally said, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "He showed us what it means to be brave, to put everything on the line for something bigger than ourselves." Emily wiped her eyes and added, "And here's to us, to making sure his story inspires others, to never stop exploring, no matter how scary it gets." Ryan downed his drink in one gulp, then set the glass down with a sigh. "Yeah, just don't expect me to volunteer for another suicide mission anytime soon." They laughed softly, the sound breaking the tension in the room. For the first time in months, there was a sense of peace, a shared understanding that while Daniel was gone, his spirit lived on through them. As the years went by, humanity continued to reach for the stars, guided by the lessons learned from Zeta 9. The shard of the anchor became a symbol of hope, displayed in museums and classrooms around the world. And whenever people looked up at the night sky, they remembered the courage of those who had faced the unknown, and the man who had saved them all. Years passed, and the story of Daniel Carter became legend, a tale told in classrooms, documentaries, and even songs. Humanity's first contact with an alien species wasn't marked by joy or celebration, but by sacrifice. It was a reminder that the universe was vast, mysterious, and often dangerous. Yet it also showed that even in the face of unimaginable odds, people could rise to meet the challenge. Emily Walsh dedicated her life to studying the Harbingers' technology and their warnings about the Devourer. She published papers detailing everything they had learned on Zeta 9, sparking debates among scientists and philosophers alike. Was humanity ready for what lay beyond Earth? Could they truly coexist with beings as ancient and powerful as the Harbingers? Emily didn't have all the answers, but she believed knowledge was the first step toward survival. Late at night, when the world was quiet, she would sit by her window, holding the shard of the anchor. Its faint glow reminded her of Daniel's bravery and the responsibility they all shared. Lisa Monroe continued her advocacy work, traveling from one corner of the globe to another. She spoke not just about peace but about preparedness. "We can't afford to be naive," she often said during her speeches. "The universe is full of wonders, but also threats. If we want to survive, we need to understand both." Her efforts led to the creation of new programs designed to train explorers and diplomats for future encounters with alien life. Though she never sought fame, Lisa became a symbol of courage and wisdom, inspiring countless others to look beyond fear and embrace curiosity. Ryan Hughes found solace in teaching. He worked with young soldiers, sharing not only combat skills, but lessons in resilience and teamwork. At first, he struggled to talk about his experiences on Zeta 9, but over time, he realized that telling his story helped him heal. His students admired him not because he was fearless, but because he admitted his weaknesses and showed them how to overcome them. In his spare time, Ryan started writing a memoir, hoping to preserve the memory of those who had stood alongside him. When asked why he bothered, he simply replied, "Because forgetting is the easiest way to fail." Though their paths diverged, the three remained close friends, meeting once a year to honor Daniel's memory. They visited the museum where the shard of the anchor was displayed, standing silently before it, as if communing with the man who had given so much. Each anniversary brought mixed emotions: sadness for what they had lost, pride in what they had achieved, and hope for what lay ahead. Meanwhile, humanity pushed further into space, driven by the same spirit that had guided Daniel and his team. New ships were built, equipped with advanced technology based on the Harbinger's designs. Colonies sprang up on distant moons and planets, each one a testament to human determination. But exploration came with risks. Strange signals were detected, anomalies discovered, and dangers faced. Through it all, the crew of Horizon 7 served as a reminder of what was possible when people worked together. One day, decades after the events on Zeta 9, a new signal reached Earth, a message written in the same language as the Harbingers. Scientists scrambled to decode it, their excitement tempered by caution. When the translation finally came through, it read, "Asterisk, the Deathworlders endure. The barriers hold, for now. Asterisk." The news spread quickly, reigniting interest in Daniel's story. People gathered in parks and town squares, gazing up at the stars with renewed wonder. They didn't know what challenges awaited them, but they knew one thing for certain: humanity's journey was far from over. And whenever whispers of doom echoed through the cosmos, people remembered the tale of when Deathworlders answered the call. And the planets shuddered.